I made it through January. I don't know how I did it, but I did it. I read 5 books. It's not my usual, but I'll take it because I had no 1 or 2 star books, so I am happy with that. I'm just gonna go into a few of my kind of like disclaimers. These will likely to contain spoilers. As I always say, I try and keep it spoiler free, however I can't 100% guarantee it will be spoiler free, therefore I am giving you a warning. I will be listing down in the description below of all the books I mentioned in the order I mentioned them, so please go check that out if you're not 100% sure. These books will contain triggers. I will be talking about maybe some quite triggering things. The books themselves will likely to contain a lot of triggers. Please just go check because I don't know what all your triggers are, okay? And I could list them and I'd be here and that'd be a whole separate video. So let's get into it. I think I've actually got these in the order in which I read them that year. Not that that month, not that it really necessarily matters, I'm sure you don't really care, but I've actually got them in order. Coming in strong, number 1. Why am I doing this like a bingo? Coming in strong at number 1, it is Cloistered by Catherine Coldstream. Now, this book is a memoir. As you know me by now, you may not know, I really enjoy a good memoir. That's like my favorite thing. That's my thing, baby. You know, I love a good memoir. I love a good autobiography and or biography. I don't know what it is. I love people that have led interesting lives, who've had interesting experiences. So this is a memoir about a woman who was a nun, and she was a nun back in the 90s. So I think it was more like the mid to late 90s. And she was a nun in the UK, in England, the north of England. I can't remember exactly where. She became a nun simply because she had a bit of a strange relationship with her mother. Her dad died when she was, I think, around the age of 19 or 20. And she had 2 other siblings, I believe. But I think they lived quite far away. And at this point, they were kind of doing something with their own lives. I think she was the younger sibling, if I remember correctly. So she was kind of left alone, really, and so she decided rather to become a nun. She experienced a lot of kind of bullying. There was a lot of kind of clickiness within the nuns, and yeah, she didn't have the best times of it, bless her. There were aspects of it she did really like, and you know, she doesn't slate it 100%. But there were also stuff that was pretty tough going, as you could probably imagine. I gave this a 3-star rating, which for me is very average. It's very middle of the road, and that's very much how I felt about this book. It was just fine. It was just okay. What I did like about it is obviously there were some quite interesting parts. Some of her experiences were fairly interesting. And there was definitely a bit towards the end where when she actually escaped, that was quite interesting. All of a sudden it like picked up. I was like, whoa, she had to like literally run in the middle of the night. And that was quite exciting, I must admit. It's kind of flash forward to where she is now, which I think she is married to a man, and I don't think she practices religion anymore, but I don't know, I think she's some sort of professor at a university. I could be wrong. And what I didn't get on so well with is, I'm gonna be honest with you, it was a bit dull in places. It was a bit boring. I know I just said it was quite interesting, but that was only certain parts. For the most part, I found quite dull. The writing just, I don't think was for me. It's written in a way rather, where it was quite poetic in language, and that's just not something I gel with personally. It's just a bit what I call kind of flowery language. I like a bit more gritty realism, and the way she would like describe her experiences was quite flowery language, I would say. It was quite, I don't know, it was like this language that I just felt personally I don't like. I know why people like it and I get it, but I just want her to tell me how it is. Like, I don't need you to be, you know, using certain phrases and stuff to make it sound better than what it is. You know what I'm trying to say. It just wasn't for me, and there were a lot of religious jargon that I didn't really understand. I'm not religious myself, and I never really have been. So there was a lot of stuff I didn't really understand. I got like a general idea. Obviously I'm not that, like, you know, naive to it, so to say, but there are some things. Obviously I'm not a nun, I've never been a nun, so there was things I think she could have explained a little bit better. Yeah, I just found it a little bit boring, I'm just going to be honest with you. But I did appreciate, obviously with these memoirs, I always do appreciate people, you know, appreciate that people put their kind of lives and soul on the page, and I do appreciate that, and it obviously does help people when they do these kind of things, when they're experiencing particularly bad times in their lives. So, you know, I can appreciate that and appreciate her honesty. It just wasn't for me. I think, I mean, I don't know, but I think there are probably better books about people's experiences with being a nun. I know back in the day, I mean, this was only the 90s, but I know back then it was a lot more stricter. I feel like they're a lot more kind of relaxed nowadays, but I could be wrong. It wasn't great, it wasn't awful, it was just okay. But like I said, I did find myself getting a little bit bored in places, hence the rating of 3 stars. They Never Learn by Layne Fargo. So this is a thriller. I really enjoyed this. This is about 2 women, and one of the women is a English professor at this quite quite prestigious university college. I don't quite know what they call it over there, but it's in America. She used to be a student there herself. Her name is, I think it's Scarlett, but she changed her name. And she had, when she was there at school, a college, university, I think it's like some sort of university college. I don't really know. I don't know the difference, to be honest. I'm sorry, I'm dumb. I'll be honest. But she went to this university, she became an English professor, but she used to be a student there. And she had 2 friends when she was there. And the one friend was called Alison, I think it was, and they had also a guy friend there, and they were kind of like a trio of friends. And she was roommates with this Alison, and when I tell you she was obsessed with Alison, she was obsessed with Alison, and she did have a bit of a crush on her. And she looked out for her a lot because Alison was a little bit more, you know, whereas Scarlett was a little bit more shy and introverted and stuff, and Alison was very much the opposite of that, and she was kind of like quite out there. She was part of the drama groups, you know, she was quite kind of a bit chaotic and wild. In this university or college, I don't really know the difference, but they've got this kind of thing where, and I know it's quite a big problem in America, it's a problem anywhere, but especially in America, they have a bit of a problem with men and SAing and or raping women. You know what I'm trying to say, right? I don't need to spell it out. You know what I'm trying to say. So she takes it upon herself to kind of get revenge on the kind of problem, the underlying problem. Now, they have reported it, they've done all that, and obviously the authorities have basically more or less turned a bit of a blind eye, gave these people a bit of a slap on the wrist, and that's about it. And she takes it upon herself to basically go around these guys. And it's kind of how these different people are connected throughout the story. It was just amazing. I loved it. I loved her character. I thought she was brilliant. There is a little bit of a sapphic romance in there, which I really liked. It had a lot to say. It had a bit of a social commentary. It definitely had a lot to say about feminism. It definitely had a lot to say about victim blaming in these kind of circumstances and things like that, which I really did appreciate, and I thought that was done really well. My only small criticism, and it is tiny, and that's why I couldn't quite give it a full 5-star rating, because to me it just felt a little bit of a caricature in that all of the men, I was going to say some of the men, literally all of the men in the books, the male characters, were presented in a way where they were just extremely misogynistic. I'm not the biggest man lover, I'm gonna just put that out there. Yes, I'm married to a man, but I'm not. However, I did feel that kind of caricature was a little bit kind of, I don't know, I felt, I'm not gonna defend men for 1 minute, don't get me twisted, but I did just feel like it was kind of a bit of a caricature, and I just feel like there are other ways to show men's misogyny. A lot of it with men is usually, not always, but usually internalized, and even in women, you know, we're not just going to come for men here, it is women as well. However, it is unfortunately more common in men. So I did think there was a bit, maybe a more smarter way to do that. Aside from that, it was excellent, and like I said, I really had a good time with this. It was kind of funny, it had kind of like dark humour, the pacing was so good, I was kind of like wanting to know what happened. I've been struggling with thriller for a while. I always used to say like, oh, thriller is my favourite genre, and it still kind of is. Recently I haven't been feeling it as much, and this kind of saved it for me, and this reminded me of why I love thrillers so much. And it was a thrilling ride, and you know, that's the whole point of thrillers. It did get a little bit far-fetched towards the end, and unfortunately all thrillers tend to kind of go that way a little bit. I thought it was really cleverly done, is that a phrase? Cleverly done. It was very well done, and yeah, kudos to the author, because that was good. This next one is interesting. I did a video of my best reads of 2025, and this one came number 1, and it was The Har by David Sodergren. And I said that at the time of this video, and I mean it now, that I've heard that was his best book, and the rest of his books are just okay. This is the only book since that I've read, and funnily, as I'm filming this, I am currently reading another David Sodergren. But anyway, we'll talk about this one, because this one actually is what I've read. The Forgotten Island by David Sodergren. Now, this is interesting in that I didn't like this really that much. I ended up giving it 3 stars, which is just very okay. So this is a horror story, and it is about 3 people who go to Thailand. Now, they're from the UK, they're British. 2 of the girls are sisters, and one of the guy that goes with them, called Paul, is the sister's boyfriend. I fucking hated him. He was a horrible, misogynistic man, and that was the whole point. You weren't really meant to like any of the male characters, because they were all, again, really horrible people, really misogynistic, just vile kind of guys, really. These 2 sisters are called Anna and Rachel. Now, I can't remember which way around they are. I think Anna's kind of more the main character, if I remember, and Rachel's the one with the boy who took her boyfriend with them. And they go partying in Thailand, because there's like a bit of a partying scene, so they go there, and they're having a really good time, and you know, the weather's great and all the rest of it. We know as the reader, a couple of years before this, they start going to this island partying. There was, going to Thailand, there's an island off Thailand. I feel like that rhymes. There's an island off Thailand, and this island got abandoned because they were starting to build a hotel, like a really bougie hotel on this island, and they had to abandon it. Construction workers had to abandon it halfway through because it basically was kind of haunted. Well, I wouldn't even say haunted, it was actually kind of insane, because they had these kind of creatures that come out from the earth and like basically killed, if not seriously injured, the construction workers. So they ended up basically fleeing this island, and the government had since shut it down. No one's allowed to go there, and it's just been left abandoned. That is until we get 3 white kids who get drunk at this party, and there's a boat, and they all just, and there's some friends as well, there's some couple of friends that they meet. They all get on this boat, and they're in like bikinis and swimsuit wear, you know, not appropriate really clothing to survive on an island. And you know where this is going. They end up drifting out. They just get drunk and they all go on this boat, and then it ends up sort of drifting off to this island because no one knows how to navigate it, and they just let the anchor go, and then they just, yeah. Anyway, and they end up on this island, and it is of course the abandoned island, and you can see where it's going from there. And kind of one by one they get kind of picked off, if you know what I mean. This was a ride, I'm not gonna lie, like this was a fucking ride. I don't know where to start with this, because it was just kind of all over the place, but in kind of the best way possible. I felt exhausted for them, because by this point they had a few bottles of water on the boat, there was alcohol on the boat, and that was it. They had like no food, or very little food I think, and they were exhausted. It was boiling hot, you know, they had little to no food and water, they had no kind of showering or washing facilities, they were in like swimsuit and bikinis and like, you know, not very good clothing or footwear, and they were trying to survive on this abandoned island. And it was just like, I felt their exhaustion. Like I was like, oh my god, I'd be sick by now, I'd be having migraines. And they were just trying to survive on this island and trying to obviously get signal or some kind of people to come and rescue them. It was fun, it was quite campy in parts, and I did like it, but my problems with it, and this is a massive kind of spoiler, so skip ahead if you don't want to listen to this bit, but the boyfriend who was a dick, so her sister's boyfriend, so he was called Paul, and there was a scene where I can't quite remember now, but he and Anna, so the sister, not his girlfriend, because at this point I think his girlfriend was lost, he met the sister, and they were obviously on this island, and they're kind of going a bit deranged and whatever, and he sees her and he tries to sexually assault her, and she ends up getting away. And what this is just insane, I can't believe I'm saying this on YouTube, but basically he has an erection still, and he ends up falling down this like pit, this hole, and it goes down and down and down. But as he's falling down, he I don't know how this happens by the way, but he was that close to like basically raping this poor woman that he basically, the sperm comes out, the cum, and as he's falling he swallows his own cum. And when I read that, I was reading this to my husband at the time, he was like, that's just stupid. I was like, I know, like that is ridiculous, like that is stupid. And that's what this book was like. There was some really stupid dumb moments, and I just thought that would never happen, like that's just stupid. I kind of get why the author did it. I think he wanted to sort of get revenge on him, and like, yeah, it was kind of, it wasn't even satisfying because it was just stupid. It was like, that would never happen, like, yeah, whatever, you know. That aside, I did quite like the Anna character. They recently lost their mum, and there was a lot of interesting conversations about the sister, because I believe that Anna was kind of looking after the mum, or was it Rachel? One of the sisters was, and she was becoming very ill, and obviously then she ended up dying and she was dead, and the other sister kind of blamed the other one because she wasn't really around. I think it was the Rachel character actually. She was partying and didn't want to know much about it, and Anna was left to care for the mum, and this really impacted her, as you know, as it would, because she's still relatively young. They're both in their early 20s. I thought that was really sweet, and towards the end they had like a really nice kind of reunion where they kind of goes, you know, they were kind of saying like, oh, I love you, and you know, I'm sorry for everything I put you through. You know, I thought that was really done really well, and there was a bit of like a nice sibling kind of, I don't know what the word, reunion as such, and I thought that was done really well. And I thought that I really liked their characters, and I liked their relationship. But apart from that, it was just a bit of a mess. It was creepy, it was scary in parts, so yeah, it definitely had the horror factor, but I wasn't like scared senseless or anything, but it was scary and it was creepy, and it was kind of cringy in parts, and it did make me cringe, and it did make me think, ugh. But that's the point, and I think it did a good job of that. So yeah, I think it just felt a little bit too much in parts, and again, all the male characters were very caricature evil. I'm not the biggest male fan myself, as I always say, but I did feel like it was a bit caricature-y, so that's my only kind of criticism. And I just felt, like I said, there were some parts that were just kind of dumb, but apart from that, I really did like it. But unfortunately, it wasn't quite hitting the mark for me. This next one, I'm sorry guys, I am very late to the party with this. I always am on this channel, so you're probably like, oh Beth, that's so old, like that's like 2 years ago. The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. This I gave 5 stars to. I absolutely love this book. Did not expect to love it as much as I did, and I did. This is like, I don't know what they class this as. It's like a YA cozy fantasy, And I've never read a book quite like this or within this genre. I probably don't need to say this because you probably know what this is about, but just for those in case you don't, this is about a guy who's in his 40s called Layne, and I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right. He is what's essentially known as a kind of caseworker, social worker for children. And he goes, well, he doesn't go, he gets told by his bosses to visit this orphanage in sort of like this coastal area and to kind of inspect these children's living conditions and inspect these children and make sure they're happy and healthy and all the rest of it. There's a little bit more to it than that, but I'll just go with that for now. So he goes down there and he knows that these children aren't just any other like normal children. Normal, I don't like saying that, but you know what I mean. These are magical children. These are magical creatures. These are magical beings. And this includes a female gnome. It includes I think there's like a sprite. There's, I'm trying to think of all there's the son of Lucifer. What else was there? I can't remember. There's like a kind of, I don't know, like a jelly monster kind of thing. Yeah, basically they're not your average kind of girly pops. You know what I'm trying to say. Yeah, so he's like, okay, this is strange. But this is set in a world where magical beings are kind of slowly being integrated with humans. And this is why kind of like over time, people kind of fear them a little bit. Not everyone, some humans are absolutely fine with them. But as you could probably imagine, this would happen. There creates, unfortunately, a bit of a divide. I loved how cute and how whimsical this was. This was so cute. Like the characters were amazing. Like they were so cute. And like there was one character, I think her name was Fee. I think she was the garden gnome. She was amazing. And you know, he comes in all kind of prim and proper, and then like as time goes on, he really starts to bond with these children and he starts to kind of see them for who they are, and he starts forming these bonds and attachments with them, and you can see him kind of slowly stripping out of his shell. And it's just such a beautiful story. It really is. I really loved Layne as a character. I thought he was absolutely brilliant. And you know, this has got found family tropes, which I love. This has really good LGBTQ plus rep. It also has like other types of rep. It's all about, I feel like this book was all about being different and what that means, finding your own family, like I said, found family, being different, and how that, you know, can be in society, how society treats people who are different, and you know, why we shouldn't. And yeah, it's a very kind of tale as old as time when I think about it. There were parts where I got a bit of a lump in my throat because it hit me here. Like it was, and it wasn't necessarily bad or sad, it was just kind of like a really kind of wholesome feeling. And like I just think the author did such a good job of describing the area as well, like the house. It's like in this really lovely coastal area, and he did a really good job of describing that. The only thing I was a bit confused about with this book, because I didn't quite know what time period it was meant to be set in, because it appears quite timeless, but there's certain things. I think he mentioned that he does emails, but then there's a very thing of like they listen to the radio, and like I don't know, there's kind of like almost old-fashioned type things that activities and things that they did, and I was like, I thought it was maybe at first set in the 40s or 50s, and then he'd mentioned stuff about emails and computers, so I was like, okay, I'm not quite sure. But yeah, that was the only thing I was a little bit confused about. I was trying to think about this book and think, what kind of criticisms do I have? And I wouldn't say those are criticisms, they're more just like questions. So if you do know that and you've read that, let me know. But I couldn't find anything, so I think that says a lot. If anything, it was maybe a little bit long in places. There were a little bit kind of draggy places, so to say, but even that, it was, I didn't mind that actually. So yeah, I liked it. I can see why it was popular, definitely. Last but not least, I did read the sequel to the first book, which is Somewhere Beyond the Sea. I just had to check that. Yeah, that's right, but of course TJ Klune. So this is a sequel to the first book. I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I didn't like this as much as the first book. I gave it 3 stars. Just felt like this book wasn't needed. I can't really say too much because kind of, you know, sequels and stuff is kind of spoilers. Very, very brief synopsis. So this tells more of the story of Arthur Parnassus, who was the owner of the orphanage, and it tells more a little bit about his backstory, and it tells about how he, I don't know, kind of came to be, I suppose, and kind of his abuse and trauma that he suffered growing up, and he kind of puts a right to a wrong, that he goes up against the courts and tries to like tell his side of the story. So it's very much about that. And then there's this kind of other story as well. They have a new, I don't know what to call it, a member, but a new member of the family, there we go, a new member of the family that joins the children, who's also a child, and he is a yeti called David, who I absolutely loved. He was a brilliant character. There were bits that I did definitely like about, like I said, David the yeti was really funny and cute, and you just wanted to give him a big hug and just look after him. Arthur's story was interesting, but I just felt like this book wasn't needed. The first book was so popular that maybe the demand for it was just too high, I don't know, but I do feel like it's very much fan service, and I do feel like it was just not needed. I feel like we got it all wrapped up very nicely in the first book. Spin-off, maybe, a prequel, maybe, but an actual sequel. I don't think it was needed. It was fine. I do think if I reread the series, I'd reread the first one, not the second one, because I just felt like, again, you could skip the second one, it wouldn't matter. The message in this one was very much about abuse. It was very much about trauma. It was very much about, again, people's differences. I just felt, and maybe this is going to be kind of controversial of me, but I did feel like the message in this one was very much on the nose, and I feel like whereas the first book, it did it very clever. Like, there was things that, you know, it was talking about, but it did it in a very clever way. I don't know, it was done in such a way where I kind of lost its kind of, I don't know what to call it, like it lost its kind of originality, I guess, because it was very on the nose about these issues, which, you know, I don't know, maybe it's me, I do support all that, and, you know, 100%, but it's like, it was very much in your face about it every 5 minutes, and it was like, yes, I support that, but you don't need to keep going on and on and on about it, you know. And it did make me laugh because there's a character in there, there's a villain character in there called Jeannie Rowder, and she was based on J.K. Rowling. I read this and I was thinking, this has got to be based on J.K. Rowling. That's not a coincidence that her initials are also the same. She's a woman, she doesn't like, basically, she's not supportive of these children's kind of like rights and certain things that were happening, and that was similar to like her views. I saw a TikTok video and the author was like, yeah, it's based on J.K. Rowling. I thought I knew it, fucking knew it. And that's what I mean by it was so on the nose, which was fine, you know. I don't have a massive problem with that, but it was a bit like, oh, I kind of like the way you did it in the first book more. Like, I feel like in the first book there was a lot more kind of like discussions about it, and they did stuff about it, and it was kind of like then there would be something else, and then that was dealt with. I don't know, but I just felt like this one was a bit more like, yeah, this is obviously about J.K. Rowling, this is obviously about trans rights, and that's absolutely fine, but it was very much like that, and it was like, okay. But I loved it, and it, you know, it does highlight some important issues, and these are things that it's not actually, although it's kind of like a class as a whimsical fantasy, cozy fantasy, I like that they did bring those issues out because it is important. But like I said, I don't know, maybe it was me, maybe by this point I'd read the first one, I was like, okay, I get it, like, I get the message, I get it. You know, and I'm supportive, don't get me wrong, but it's like a bit much, you know, like, we get it. That was my only little criticism, and that's not why I gave it 3 stars, by the way, don't get it twisted. I also gave it 3 stars because I just don't feel like it was needed. I feel like we did all this in the first book, we did the kind of fighting for power and justice and all that, you know, and equal rights, and we did all that, and it got wrapped up quite nicely, and then it's like, it kind of brought it back with then Arthur's backstory, and there were like other little things, but it was just like, I just didn't feel like it was needed. I really don't. It was still good, I still had a good time though, and, you know, I give it more of a high 3 stars than an average 3 stars. Just didn't quite hit the same, and I think it would have benefited more, like I said earlier, from a prequel or a spin-off story. That is the five books that I read in January. Not my average is usually around 9 books. I don't quite know why I didn't read as many books. I don't know. Busy, I guess. I'm a very busy girl. My favourite book that I read, if you haven't already guessed, is of course House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. I definitely think it's worth the hype. Like I said, I'm not a massive fantasy person, not massive. I think that's my first proper like cozy fantasy. No, it's not actually. I have read something else. This is how you do cozy fantasy, and I love that he, you know, discussed and brought up real life issues and topics, and did it in such a way that it was in kind of like a safe space. I felt I liked that. I think the author did a really good job of that, and I do think everyone should read that book. I think it's really good. I think you'll like it. Just try it. Just try. My least favourite book that I read, there wasn't like 1 or 2 stars. Like I said, there were no kind of awful books. I think it has to be Cloistered by Coldstream, the memoir of the nun. It was okay, but it just wasn't, out of all the books, if I had to rank them, it'd be at the bottom. That's it, baby. That's all the books. I usually, this takes me a lot longer to do because I read more books. Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like now I'm choosing my books a lot better. I don't have a lot of really negative things to say about books anymore because I'm choosing them a lot better, I think. Obviously sometimes they still surprise me, but that's January. That's January, 5 books. I hope in February I read a lot more because it's a shorter month, I probably will. But I shall keep you updated. Thank you for watching, and as ever, I hope you have a lovely day.